Terminator was developed and published by Bethesda Softworks, and it was released in 1991 for the PC-DOS. Today Bethesda Softworks is best known for creating the Elder Scrolls series with games like Morrowind, Oblivion and Skyrim, and also for making Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. But long before those amazing games would see the light of day, they also had the Terminator license, and they created 5 Terminator games for the PC-DOS. They created the Terminator, then the Terminator 2029, the Terminator Rampage, the Terminator Future Shock, and the Terminator Skynet. The Terminator was also one of the very first games that were ever made by Bethesda Softworks. Before that they made a handful of sports games, and if I'm not mistaken they published 1 or 2 other games. And the Terminator was also the very first official licensed game based on the first Terminator movie. But instead of making a side-scrolling action jump and run, a rail shooter, or a game that consists out of different genres, with driving stages for instance, and jump and run stages and so on, Bethesda went a different direction and created a 3D open world action adventure, where you can play as Kyle Reese and protect Sarah Connor from the Terminator, or you play as the Terminator and hunt down Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese, to discuss their future plans. The setting is a virtual reproduction of central Los Angeles from the 80s, which has an impressive size of about 60 square miles, including landmarks like the Dodger Stadium and the Griffith Observatory. Highways, overpasses and bridges were left out, but overall the game features about 20,000 3D objects. Both Kyle and the Terminator will start on random locations every time you play the game. Even though both characters start with nothing in the inventory, the manual explains that your character was already able to find some clothes, so you don't have to find those and you're not running around naked in this game. But what you need to find to survive and win the game are weapons, ammunition and other equipment. Therefore there are 7 different kinds of buildings that you can enter and interact with, which are spread out multiple times over the entire map. There are gun stores, sports stores, drug stores, hospitals, banks, shooting ranges and army depots. To help you with your orientation and finding a specific building, you can bring up a local map which shows you your position and the nearby buildings and vehicles. Yes, there are also vehicles in this game, but I'm gonna talk about those later on in this review. If you can't find a specific building on the local map, you can also take a look into the phone book, which shows you advertisements of all the available buildings in the local area with their coordinates. The phone book has a bigger range than the local map. If you can't find what you're looking for, travel a little bit around by foot or with a car and search again. Sooner or later you're gonna find what you're looking for. Beside the local map, you can also bring up the main map, which shows you the whole game area. And if you want, you can use the fast traveling option on both maps. Just point the cursor to the location that you want to travel to and press F on the keyboard. The buildings that are the most important, at least in the beginning, are the stores, especially the gun store and the drug store. The gun store is obvious. There you can buy or steal a Beretta, a Magnum, an Uzi, an M16 or an AK-47, plus ammunition for all those weapons and other equipment like binoculars or a bulletproof vest. Now, like already mentioned, you can buy or steal items in shops, but in order to buy something you have to find some money. That's also a big reason why the gun store and the drug store are very important, because they have a cash register that you can steal in order to get some cash. Stealing items or the cash register will have consequences. As soon as you steal something, the cops are on their way to get you. The time it takes them to arrive varies every time. Sometimes you have enough time to steal half the store, and the next time they're standing right next to you as soon as you grab something. If the police catches you while you're still in the store, a message will appear telling you that the police wants to have a word with you outside the store. Next you're gonna be on the street, the store is closed, and the police is trying to shoot you, no matter if you have stolen thousands of dollars or just a lighter. Now you have two choices, either you run away or you shoot back. If you're lucky and you don't get caught while leaving the building with one or more stolen items, then you don't have to deal with the police at all. But the store will be closed and you can't enter it anymore for the rest of the current game, even though it reopens as soon as you leave its entering range / area. But if you decide to enter the store again later on, the police will show up immediately, every time. Like already mentioned, the drugstore is also a very important building. Like the gun store, it also has a cash register that you can steal in order to get some money, but you can also find some very useful items, like a crowbar or a hatchet, which will come in handy if you decide to visit one of the 3 army depots later on. The bank is the third and last building to get some money, but you only have the option to rob it, which will bring you a nice amount of money, but you will always have to encounter the police afterwards. The sports store has all kinds of sport articles like clothes and shoes, and I'm sure also this store has a cash register, but since you can't see it, you can't steal it. At the shooting range you can practice shooting if you want. At the hospital you can heal injuries as long as you play Kyle Reese. As a Terminator you will scare the dog half to death and they will call the police. The last of the 7 buildings that you can enter and interact with is the Army Depot, and that's where they keep the good stuff. There you can find M16s, M60s, plus ammo belts, helmets, 2 kinds of grenades and also a rocket launcher, which is not that easy to use and in most cases you're gonna blow up yourself with it. But anyways, it's available and yeah, it's the most powerful weapon in the game. Since the army depots don't sell their stuff, your only option is to steal them. But if someone catches you, you have to deal with the army instead of the police. Also, the army depots don't appear in the phone book or the 2 in-game maps, but you can find the coordinates in the manual and they are also marked with red triangles on the map that came with the game. On this map there are also some other markings, but I actually can't tell you what they are standing for. My theory is that if you play as Kyle Reese, the chances are higher that you will run into the Terminator at those locations, but again, this is just a theory of mine. At the beginning of the game you have a couple of options to choose from. Who do you wanna play? The Terminator or Kyle Reese? Then full game or short game, with the difference that in the full game you start with nothing at all, and in the short game you start with some weapons, ammunitions and a couple of items. Then we have real mode and practice mode. The real mode is basically the normal game, and in the practice mode your enemy is missing. So if you play Kyle Reese, then there's no Terminator, and the other way around. You can also select the graphics detail level, then the controls if you wanna play this game with keyboard only or with joystick and keyboard, and lastly you can also change the difficulty level. The game screen is separated in two sections. On the top half is the character vision display, which shows you of course what your character is seeing in this game. On the bottom half we have a couple of indicators. Like on the right side we can see how much ammunition we have left in the primary and secondary weapon. Then right next to them we have an indicator that shows you the walking/running speed of your character. Below is the grenade toss power indicator. This numeric display helps you to judge how hard you're throwing a grenade. It starts at 0 and quickly climbs up to 100. If it reaches 100, then the grenade will be thrown automatically, since the maximum power was reached. But of course the throwing power can be controlled by the player by releasing the fire button before the number reaches 100. A little advice: never release the fire button until a throwing power of at least 40 was reached, otherwise you'll be in the blast zone. Next we have a little radar, which will also work as a compass, as long as you have bought or stolen a compass before. It can also display a couple of different colored lines. The first one is a green line, which is almost all the time visual, and it tells you the direction where to find Sarah Connor if you're playing as the Terminator. According to the manual, it should also tell you the direction to find the Terminator if you're playing as Kyle Reese. But that's actually not the case, and it will always point to Sarah, even though it sometimes points in different directions or jumps around for a short time. The next one is a yellow line, which will only be visible as long as you own a compass, and it tells you which direction your character is actually facing. It might not sound like much, but it really makes the game a little bit easier in terms of orientation. Then next we have a red line, which will be visible if someone shoots at you, and it tells you from which direction the shoots come from. The red line will only appear if the police or the army is shooting at you. Then we have a white line. The white line will also tell you if somebody is shooting at you, but the white line stands for your main enemy. So if you're playing as the Terminator, then it will show you the direction where Kyle Reese or Sarah Connor is shooting at you, and also the other way around. If you're playing as Kyle Reese, then you can see from which direction the Terminator is shooting at you. Then there's also a light red line. This line will only be visible or come up if you play as Kyle Reese and you have a dog by your side, since the dog can sense the Terminator before he strikes, and he alerts you by barking in his direction, and sometimes the Terminator will actually be chased away by the dog. On the left side we have a status window. It will tell you a couple of things, like for instance when you're near a building or a vehicle that you can interact with, or your bulletproof vest has become useless because you've been taking too many hits. But it can also show you some death animations of soldiers, policemen and citizens if you shoot them. This was actually also one of those things that was highly criticized by game magazines back in the day, that you can see those death animations. On the bottom there is the weapon bar, which shows you all your current weapons, and the function key that you have to press in order to select, reload or deselect those weapons. As the Terminator, you will also have a heads-up display on top of the screen with a couple of helpful indicators, like for instance your exact local coordinates, sector coordinates, your score, system status strobe, and so on. If you want, you can deactivate the heads-up display at any time, and you also have the option to play this game in a full screen mode.
I'll be back.
Beside the heads-up display, there are also some other differences between the Terminator and Kyle Reese. The Terminator can carry more items/weapons, he also has more hit points than Kyle Reese, and his eyes have a zoom function which can be multiplied with the binoculars. Kyle on the other hand has a faster walking/running speed, he can use the hospital like already mentioned, and he can give items to Sarah, but only to carry them around. She can't use any of the weapons or items, and for no apparent reason you also can't give her a bulletproof vest. Except maybe for the fact that the developers didn't want it for Sarah to be safer. As Kyle you can also give Sarah 3 basic commands, either to stay at the current location, to run away if the Terminator shows up, or to follow you. You can bring up this little commands menu by pressing Q on the keyboard, and this will also include 2 other options to either give or take items from her inventory. And yeah, those are actually all the differences between Kyle Reese and the Terminator. Both characters have the ability to heal any kinds of injuries at almost any time of the game, except during a firefight or if enemies are nearby, and those events will also end a healing process if you're right in the middle of one of those. Also the fast traveling is unavailable during those events, and they will also be interrupted by the same circumstances. To heal your character you have to press F10 on the keyboard and select physical status in this menu. Now you can see a little graphic of your character in the middle of the screen, a lot of numbers and indicators on the right, and a line/bar graphic on the left side. The physical status of your character is divided in 4 body part groups: head, torso, arms and legs. Beside death, increase in damage on specific body parts can cause side effects like decreased movement abilities or temporary blindness. The indicators on the right show you if and how bad each body part is injured. The 2 lines/bars on the left side represent the current health of the Terminator, which is the red one, and Kyle Reese, which is the orange one. The graphic in the middle is just an extra visualization of your character's body, and body parts will turn from a blue to a red color as soon as they get damaged. To heal your character, just select the wounded body part and press enter. In the physical status menu there is also an indicator that tells you the estimated repair/heal time, and according to the manual this is real game time, and with the right items you should be able to decrease it. But honestly I think they forgot to put that into the game, since I never was able to get a faster healing time/repair time even though I bought all the first 8 items as Kyle and all the tools which were available in this game for the Terminator. Also a visit to the hospital won't give you any benefit in terms of healing time. The only advantage that you will have inside a hospital is that Kyle can heal without getting interrupted by enemies. Now let's talk about the cars. Yes, there are many cars available in this game, and except for a couple of trucks and school buses you can use any one of them. Most of the cars in this game have an automatic transmission, but there are also some cars with a manual transmission. Inside the car you have 4 indicators: a gear shift indicator, a speedometer, a fuel gauge, and the last one shows you the hit points of the car. But those hit points are only important if you get into a firefight. You can run over other people, but if you hit anything else with any kind of speed, the car is destroyed and you will get injuries from this car accident. You also get injuries if the car runs out of hit points during a firefight and you're still sitting inside the car, and if you try to exit the car while driving. Each car has about a quarter full of a tank, and if you run out of gas you have to find another car, or before you run out of gas you find a gas station and fill up the car. Now I know the gas station is also a building, and yes, you can also interact with it, but I didn't mention it before, basically because you can only visit it as long as you are in a car and as long as you have money to pay for fuel, because you can't really enter a gas station and you also can't steal fuel. Except for the 2 kinds of transmissions, each car handles exactly the same, and also the terrain has no effect on the performance of the car, so it doesn't matter if you use the roads or not. The controls of the cars are very realistic in terms of the transmissions. Each gear has its own key on the keyboard, and like in real life, driving a car with an automatic transmission is pretty straightforward. Just start the car, select the gear, most of the times you will be using the driving gear, and drive away. But driving a stick shift needs some practice, since you have to learn how to use the clutch and basically the relationship between the clutch, the gas pedal and the transmission. And it's also exactly in this game. There is a key for the clutch, and in order to drive away with a car that has a manual transmission, you have to start the car, press and hold the clutch, apply gas, and after the car reached at least 10 km per hour, you can release the clutch, since otherwise you will stall the engine, and then you have to try it again. The rest of the controls in this game are also a little bit overwhelming, and they definitely need some time to get used to. A lot of people compare the controls of this game with the controls of a flight simulator, and I totally agree with this comparison. But they work, and after you've played the game a couple of times, they are not that complex anymore. Even though the 3D graphics are pretty basic, they were still impressive for 1991, especially the fact that the game was programmed with turbo assembly and turbo debugger. The game was made for PCs with an EGA or VGA graphics card. All the 3D in-game graphics and menus are EGA graphics, everything else, the intro, main menu, all the endings and all the insides of buildings were made for both graphic cards. Now for this review I've played and recorded the game in VGA mode, but at the end of this review I'm gonna add a couple of scenes from the EGA mode just for those people who are interested in it. For the sound you have three options: the PC speaker, Adlib sound card or Sound Blaster. I'm not gonna talk about the PC speaker because I think that thing can cause ear cancer. With the Adlib sound card the intro music is actually pretty good, but all the sound effects with the Adlib sound card, they sound more like interferences, and each sound effect sounds very similar to the other ones, so I'm actually not a fan of this sound setting. But with the Sound Blaster you get actually the best audio quality for music and sound effects. And at this point I actually have to apologize to you, since except for the intro music there's actually no in-game music, and I used a music track from Terminator Rampage for this review, so sorry for that, but I thought it would be more enjoyable to watch this review with an in-game music. I guess the reason why there's no in-game music is either Bethesda ran out of disk space, or maybe they left it out on purpose for the atmosphere.
I'll be back.
One cool feature is that you can play this game against the second player, if you link two PCs together. There is also an option in one of the in-game menus, which is almost useless in the single player game, but makes total sense in the two-player mode: the special actions option. With the right items you can perform more or less special actions. Like for instance, if you have dog food, you can use it to get a watchdog. This is, by the way, the only helpful special action that I know of in the single player game. And also it only works as long as you play as Kyle Reese, because as the Terminator the dog will run away since he knows there's something wrong with you. Other items that can be used for special actions are the duck call, which distracts the dog, powder, which I guess can be used to block the view of your enemy, and nails, which you can spread out on the ground. My guess is that you can use it to damage or destroy the car of the enemy if you play against the second player. There are also a couple of drawbacks and weaknesses in this game that I wanted to mention. The first one is that the game suffers from slowdowns every now and then. Most of the times it happens because there's a lot of objects on the screen, which is understanding, but sometimes it happens without any reason at all. The next thing is that the movements of your character and the cursor in the stores are too slow. So you constantly have to use the shift key for almost everything in this game, since with the shift key your character runs and turns faster, and also the cursor will move faster with the shift key. The only situation where the normal movement speed comes in handy are to make some small adjustments while aiming your gun, and also to make some small adjustments while driving. Also in this game, like in so many other games, water will kill your character. Not instantly, but after a short time, Kyle and the Terminator will drown. Another thing that kinda irritates me is that everybody's trying to kill you, even though you are not the actual threat in a specific situation. And what I mean by that is that as soon as you cross the path of your enemy, doesn't matter if it's the Terminator or Kyle and Sarah, they will open fire at you. So far, so normal. But the irritating part is that nobody cares, that some guy or girl is shooting at another one, no matter how many bullets your enemy fires, nobody will care. But as soon as you shoot one bullet, out of nowhere will appear either cops or soldiers and everybody will open fire at you. Now I know it's an old game and it's supposed to be hard, but it feels kinda cheap and a little bit unfair, especially when your main enemy or enemies can also do magic tricks where they walk behind a building, car or even a tree and suddenly disappear in thin air. Playing as the Terminator is also a little bit more enjoyable in my opinion than playing as Kyle Reese. Not because the Terminator is the bad guy, but because you always know where to go to find Kyle and Sarah and finish your mission. As Kyle, you also have to destroy the Terminator in order to win the game, but you don't have any kind of indicator that tells you where you can find him. Only an animation will appear on the screen if he is somewhere in the local area, which is not really helpful, but it works pretty good for the atmosphere if you're not prepared yet for a confrontation. The easiest way that I know to find the Terminator is by using the fast traveling option. As soon as I think I'm prepared for the final showdown, I fast travel all over the map until I get attacked, and yeah, then it's hammer time. The more I played this game and the longer I worked on this review, the more I noticed two things. Bethesda created a game that was about a couple of years ahead of its time, and they either miscalculated the needed disk space for such an open world game, or they had to rush the game in the end to keep the release date. Since there are few things in the manual which are not in the game, or they don't work as in the manual described. Like the already mentioned items which are supposed to speed up the healing process. The hospitals should also have this advantage, then a combination of specific items should become another useful item. This also never happened, except of course they meant that you can combine an empty weapon with the right ammunition in order to use this weapon. And you can also add a silencer and a scope to this weapon, or actually to almost every weapon. But by the way, yeah, the silencer has no advantage at all. One other thing that is missing in this game is traffic. Except yourself, nobody else is driving around in this game. Only if you play with a second player, then you might see another car driving around. Even though I mentioned now a lot of negative stuff about this game, I still think it's a fun and a very interesting game. And Bethesda really tried to put as much realism into this game as possible. Like the two different kinds of transmissions for the cars, for instance, then the complex controls, the fact that the stores and banks can be closed without any reason. Actually, one time I was playing this game, only every 5th store was open. So I thought to myself, maybe this run takes place on a Sunday or maybe on a specific holiday. I mean, it can happen. Also at first I thought it was kinda strange that you can buy items, but there's no indicator or price tag that tells you how much you have to pay for those items. So maybe Bethesda forgot about the price tags, or it was left out on purpose again, since neither Kyle nor the Terminator knew the value of money, at least in the movie. There's also some kind of a wanted level system which reacts to your actions in this game. I actually don't know how accurate it is, but for instance, if you rob a bank, you will attract more attention than if you rob a store. So you have to deal with more policemen afterwards, and depending of your following action, like getting caught while robbing more stores and banks, killing civilians, cops or soldiers, the number of people that are after you will increase. You will encounter cops a lot more often during your traveling than usually, which will make the fast traveling option almost useless. Then with each encounter the attacks will get more and more aggressive, until you reach a specific point where you become such a threat that you will be chased by the army instead of the police. Only while traveling in a car you are for the most part safe. There are no roadblocks or ambushes in this game. The fast traveling option is also disabled while sitting in a car, and running over people with your car has no consequences. Which is actually a good thing, because in this game, some pedestrians literally throw themselves in front of your car.
I'll be back.
So, in the end, like I already mentioned before, in this review I actually think it's a pretty cool game. Yes, it has a couple of flaws, but Bethesda Softworks showed that they were not afraid to try something different than so many other video game companies before, especially at that time, and especially with a movie licensed game. For me, the Terminator has actually more historical value, since a lot of the ideas and features that were used in this game were later improved and implemented into the Elder Scrolls games, like for instance the huge game world / the areas with a fast traveling option, then tons of items which are more or less useful, and the fact that your actions can have consequences for the better or the worse, and also a couple of other stuff. And I would recommend the Terminator to fans of PC-DOS games. Then I would also recommend it to video gamers who are fans of the Terminator movies and who are not afraid of those old 3D graphics and complex controls in a video game, and lastly of course to video game collectors. And now we're at the end of my review of the Terminator for the PC-DOS, the first of 5 games which were made by Bethesda Softworks, and in the near future I'm also gonna review the rest of those games. So, I hope you enjoyed the show, maybe see you next time, take care, bye, and I'll be back.
I'll be back.